I've started examining. Look at me. I can't even talk about this in a serious way. How does one write this all the time that everyone's jerking their chin? I need a minute. Hold on. Hey, welcome back to my channel. I'm Erica and I appreciate you being here. We are ready for another installment today in my Throne of Glass series where I read through this series and I figure out why is it so popular? Why is Sarah J Maas so popular? I need to understand why this is in my face everywhere. This is going to be the 5th video in my series. I will link the playlist in the description box down below. If you want to check out my thoughts on the other books, feel free to go and do that. What we're going to be talking about today is the 5th book in the main Throne of Glass series. This is Empire of Storms. There is a prequel novella, but as far as the main actual book series goes, this is number 5, and that's what I read through for this video. Feel free to check out the chapters. I try to put chapters in all my videos. So let's talk now about just a general spoiler-free wrap-up that I have for my overall thoughts on this book. It is safe to view this if in fact you have not read and you don't want any spoilers. I'm not going to give you any spoilers. Overall, I really enjoyed reading this book. I would say that it was on the same level, maybe even slightly higher than the last one. What was it? Queen of Shadows. I really enjoyed this. I thought the pacing was really good outside of the first quarter of the book, because it was kind of a rough start. It didn't draw me in at the very beginning of this book like the other ones all have. I know that I mentioned it in my reading vlog, but with this author, she has a tendency through all of her books where she can do a really solid beginning and a really solid ending, but sometimes the middle of the book is just not, like, the pacing is kind of wonky. There's parts that feel like they're dragging. But this book, weirdly, the first part of the book felt like it was slow to get going, like the pacing was weird. It didn't draw me in right away like the other books in the series did. But thankfully that all got resolved a little bit before we got to the second quarter of the book. And so the pacing picked up, the action started, like the plot started going, and once it did, credit to the author, it really had a solid run all the way through the book. It felt good. There was a lot of action going on. I kept wanting to see what was going to happen next. That's what I want in a book. I want a book that compels me to keep reading it, right? I don't want a book that's like a chore to read. So this book and the previous book in the series, they both did a pretty solid job at keeping me invested in reading this. I also really enjoyed the character development in this book and some of the character pairings that we get to see as well. I feel like the author did a pretty decent job in showing us more growth with most of the characters, and especially my favorite characters, I feel like we got to see more growth in, which of course I'm selfishly very happy about. But some of the pairings that we see between these characters, when they're interacting with each other, they're kind of odd couples, but that just makes it enjoyable to read, because some of them are some real weird dynamics going on, because characters can be so different from each other. To see it play off of each other, I thought one of my favorite things about this book was watching some of the characters and their interactions with each other. I thought that was done really well. One of the things that I have noticed though is, unfortunately, there is some repetition in the books that's starting to kind of bother me. It's not at the point where it's making me angry or anything like that. Just there's a few things that I've noticed where I'm like, okay, we need to stop using this. Aelin sticks her tongue out all the time, and I find it very odd because she's not a playful person. She really doesn't have a sense of humor. So when she does it, I don't take it as a playful way. I take it as just this is very strange and out of character, and I don't really know what we're doing. So if Aelin could stop sticking her tongue out, that would be great. Also, vulgar gesture. Vulgar gesture is used all the time. I don't know what it is. Does the author mean that they're flipping someone off? I don't know. I don't know what a vulgar gesture... I mean, I know what a vulgar gesture is, but in the context of these books, I don't know what it is. Someone let me know if you know, because I have no idea. But it happens a lot, and I'm just every single time it kind of takes me out of it, because I'm what do you mean? Let's get more specific. What do you mean? The words mate and cadre are both used way too, if you're gonna sit and read this series, okay, I want you to know right now, you need to make peace with the fact that these two words are gonna be used to death, okay? It is a dead horse that's still getting beaten. I presume they're both gonna be beaten in the last two books too. they're overused to the point where I don't want to say them myself in my personal life. Like, I mean, I don't ever use the word cadre, so I can't imagine a scenario in normal life in which I would. But the word mate, I don't know, I don't use it that often, but like it's not a word that I would never use. But now I'm just like, no, I don't even want to. It's kind of like a spite not using it now. Like I don't want to use those words in real life out of spite. Cadre. Let's talk about cadre for a minute, right? I do not know why this word is what the author chose to go with when describing the group of people that Rowan has, the group of Fae that Rowan has like worked with over hundreds of years. They're all like blood sworn to Maeve. I do not know why this is the word that she has chosen for Aelin to use, and now apparently everyone in the world is using this to refer to Rowan's group. It's a French word, I believe, but I don't think I can't think off the top of my head of any other French words in this universe that we've encountered so far. I'm sure that if there are some, let me know. If there's like a culture in this series that's based off of the French, let me know, because I think that will make a lot more sense to me. But from what I've seen, it just kind of sticks out because it doesn't really go with the rest of the language being used in the book, so it just kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. So every time I read it, I'm like, where does this word even come from? Like, what are we doing? Why are we using this? Somebody let me know. Somebody let me know if there is an actual group of people in the Throne of Glass series that's like based on the French. Because if there is, you know what? Good. Because I can buy in that that is a word that Aelin has just like taken from that culture and decided to use it in this instance. I can accept that, and then I think it will no longer bother me. But as of right now, it bothers me, and I want us to not use that word anymore in this series. And then finally, the jerking of a chin. Everyone's jerking their chin all over the place. I'm imagining it's like this. Everyone's, I don't know, like kind of like rocking out in a time in which they have no music to rock out to. I don't know, but every character in this book seems to be jerking their chin in like every interaction they have with anybody. And it's just strange because like because since I've been reading this and I see apparently everyone in this book is jerking their chin all I can't even say it with a straight face. They're jerking their chin all over the place. I've started examining. Look at me. I can't even talk about this in a serious way. How does one write this all the time that everyone's jerking their chin? I need a minute. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. Since I've been reading about... Nope, I need a minute. Okay, let's try this again. Since I've been reading about all these characters jerking their chins all over the place, I'm doing my best. I'm sorry. I'm doing my best. I've started examining like my own behavior. Do I jerk my chin? Stop it. Are the people I know jerking their Are the people I know jerking their chin? Look at me. I'm like crying. I'm laughing so hard. I'm like crying. Are the people I know jerking their chins all the time when I interact with them? I feel like I would notice. I feel like I would notice if I was talking to people all the time and they're like, yeah. Yeah, like where did this come from? Look at me, I'm crying. I'm gonna like jack up my makeup because like, where does this come from? Why is everybody doing it? I didn't count how many times people jerked their chins. I didn't count how many times people jerked their chins in this book, but it was like a lot. It was a lot. Everybody is, I'm not gonna do it again. I'm not gonna laugh again. No, I probably will. I didn't count how many times everyone was jerking their chin around, but it was like a lot. If you told me it was mentioned like 100 times in this book, somebody jerking their chins, somebody jerking their chin around, I would believe you. I would also believe it was less because it's an action that sticks out because it's just so odd. It's not something that I would say happens very often, at least not for myself or for other people that I know when I'm interacting with them. So it could possibly be less than 100 times, and I would also believe that and just feel like it sticks out to me every single time it's mentioned because it's so odd to me as an action. But I could also believe that it was way more than 100 times that people were jerking. You know what it is? It's the word jerk. It's the word jerk in their chin. It's jerking. That's making me laugh like a child. I could also believe that it's way more than like 100 times that jerking your chin. Try and roll hard, man. Jerking your chin was mentioned in this book. I could believe that because it felt like a lot. It felt like everybody's jerking their chin around. I need you let me know. If you're watching this, please let me know. Do you jerk your chin around? Do you jerk your chin around? Do the people you know jerk their chins around all the time? Are me and my people that I know in real life, are we just strange for not jerking our chins around? Is this like a thing that everybody does that we're not doing and I don't know about it? It's totally possible. Let me know. Let me know your chin jerking status in the comments, okay? Please. I would genuinely, I would like to know. What are we all doing with the jerking of the chin? Should I be doing it more? If everyone else is doing it and it's like a socially normal thing and I'm not doing it, do people think I'm weird because I'm not jerking my chin all over the place? I don't know. Somebody let me know. Everybody, you know what? In fact, everybody let me know. Let me know your thoughts on chin jerking. Let me know. I really enjoyed seeing the magic that was used in this book. It feels like we keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the magic systems in the Throne of Glass universe. I can certainly get into that. I love that like not everyone has the same kinds of magic. Of course, I think that makes it a lot more interesting. You've got to be more strategic when you're looking to fight, right? Like either fight together or fight an opponent. Different magic comes into play. So I think that keeps things interesting. And the author's done a pretty good job at keeping the magic system, like it's what we would refer to as like a soft magic system, right? Because there's not really a lot of defined hardcore rules, but it hasn't gotten to the point where it's like such a fluid unknown system that like every problem is solved with magic. It doesn't feel that way either. I think that the author struck a nice balance in the magic use in this book with the different characters that have the ability. I also really liked that this book took place in different locations. It's a huge diversion from the first few books in the series where they mostly took place in like one location or one city throughout the book. In this book, we were going around to different locations, so it was different environments, meeting different groups of people. I thought it kept things fresh and interesting to where we weren't just jumping around between different perspectives, which we were, and I liked how that was used. But like the group as a whole was going around to different locations and not just staying in one spot. I really want to see more of the continent. There's a lot of different cultures on this continent and a lot of different environments that could create challenges for the characters to deal with. So I really hope, I know that the next book I think is going to be following Kale, and so that's going to be presumably taking place in like an entirely different location than what we've seen before, which I am looking forward to. I think that I said in one of my little vlogs that I had in this video that Kale is kind of a divisive character. It seems like people either really like Kale or really don't like Kale. I fall in the camp of I really like Kale. I'm not mad that he's apparently getting like an entire book or most of a book to what he's been up to during the course of the events of when this book took place. So we'll see. I hope that I like the next one just as much as I liked this. And I'm hoping that for the final book in the series, you know, after Kale's book is next, and then presumably we're going back to like an all-encompassing storyline with like all the characters at once. I'm hoping that the final book will also take place in a bunch of different locations. I think it just keeps things more interesting. I feel like the series really started to come into its own when the author started exploring more outside of just like these closed kind of location settings. And so I'm hoping for a big finale when we next come back to these characters from this book. Overall, I think I'm also going to rate this one 4 stars. I know I rated the last one 4 stars. I thought this one was also a solid entry. Definitely an improvement over the earlier books in the series, and I think it's clear that by this point Sarah J Maas has gotten more comfortable in writing and really developed her skill over the years that it took her to get to this point. Like, there's definitely still parts of the books that I don't think are like perfect to deserve 5 stars. I do think that this was a solid entry into the series, and it's one of the better books. I think this one and the last one are both solidly 4-star books, and they're both enjoyable to read. This one was enjoyable to read. The last quarter of the book, I kept just like wanting to turn the pages and keep going and find out what was going to happen. And that's really all that I ask for. Well, that's maybe not all that I ask for from an author. That's one of the big things that I ask for from an author is like, please draw me in, make me want to keep reading what's going on, make me want to find out what happens next, because that's so fun, you know, when I'm like sitting and reading a book and I just find myself intensely focused, right? I'm in the zone, like everything else is tuned out and I'm just like turning the page, what's going to happen? I'm almost too eager to turn the page and I almost turn it too fast because like I just gotta know what happens. And that was definitely how I felt in the last part, like the last quarter of this book. I felt like it was really good build up through the first parts of the book and then solid payoff at the end. And I'm excited to read what happens next. We're going to talk some spoilers, and I had not so much mixed feelings on this book, but I think definitely my idea of some of the characters changed quite a bit as I read through this book. So you're going to see me update, like I said, every quarter of the way through the book. I'll be doing a check-in, and then you're going to see me back here at the end with, I'm rocking my Blitzball shirt today, so I got that going for me. We're going to talk about my thoughts on the final quarter of the book, and then I will give my spoilery overall wrap-up thoughts. I'll see you soon. So I just finished chapter 18 in Empire of Storms. That means I'm 25% of the way through. I'll talk about like the high points at the end of Queen of Shadows, the book before this one, and then I'll talk about my thoughts on some of what's been going on in the beginning of this book. So when we left off in the last book, quite a lot happened in that final wrap-up section of the book. There was the blowing up of the tower that the King of Adarlan had been using to suppress magic. So since that was blown up, magic flooded back like throughout the kingdom. Any magic user can use magic again now. We also had Aelin. I keep still at this point. Sometimes I want to call her Selena. No, we had Aelin and Kale go into the castle. They rescue Dorian, but not without a lot of problems. Like Kale gets, it sounds like he's paralyzed. And we also have Dorian and Aelin confront the King of Adarlan. We learn that the king has actually been possessed by a Valg, like a Valg prince. But even knowing this and getting the Valg prince out of him, Dorian still kills him anyway. So King of Adarlan is dead. Glass Castle is no more. Aelin declares to the entire city of Rifthold that Dorian is the king now. She killed the King of Adarlan, but everyone should follow Dorian's rule now. She and Rowan and Lysandra and Adian, man, that's a lot of names for me to remember. They decide to start heading north to Terrasen to reclaim Aelin's throne up there. That's kind of where we leave them at the end. We also see Kale is heading down south to one of like the magic centers. They're gonna see if the healers down there can try to heal the injuries he got when he fought the King of Adarlan. We also have one of the best characters in the book, Manon. She had a lot going on in the last book. We basically ended though with the fortress where she had been stationed throughout the majority of the book got blown up by Kaltain, and so Manon herself was not in this explosion. She and her 13, her coven, they escaped. They did end up dropping a lead off, like a little bit outside of that area so that a lead could start heading north. She's going to be trying to find both Aelin, because Alid is a former subject of Terrasen, so she's going to try to find Aelin because she wants to ally herself with the queen. And she's also supposed to try to find Selena because Kaltain, before she died, gave her a word key and told her to give it to Selena. Now, Elide doesn't know that this is a word key and has probably no idea what a word key even is, but she just knows she needs to get it to Selena. She has no idea that Selena and Aelin are in fact the same person, so we will see how long it takes for that to actually be revealed to her. And then of course we also learned through all of this that it was not just the King of Adarlan that was possessed by a Valg, but in fact Duke Parrington, who'd been hanging out down in Morath, which is where Manon had been stationed, like a lot of real wild, should never be done medical experimentation had been going on to kind of make crosses between humans and witches and Valg and some real weird medical experimentation. So where all that had been going on, Duke Parrington, it turns out, is possessed by the Valg, like the Valg King. I believe his name is Erewhon, and it was thought that this Valg dude was killed like centuries ago. Turns out he wasn't. Turns out he's just been hanging out all this time and is currently possessing, well, at the end of the book, he's possessing Duke Parrington. So Aelin's going to have to figure out a way to deal with that, because that's going to be a problem. That is where we left off in Queen of Shadows, and we pick up in, this is upside down. We pick up in this book pretty much right away from everything that had just happened. Chaol is not in this book. I think that, I haven't looked too deeply into it, but I think he gets his own book. Is it the next one? I think that there's some kind of suggestion, if you really want to, you could read this book and his book like alongside each other, kind of going back and forth with the chapters. So no Chaol in this book. There are mentions of him so far, but he has made no appearance. As far as we know in this book, he's currently either heading south or already south, trying to get to the healers so that they can work on his injuries. So no Chaol in this one, which frankly, I don't know, I'm kind of disappointed about. I like Chaol. I know that it seems like in the fandom, he seems to be kind of a controversial character where, or maybe I should say divisive, like a divisive character. People either seem to really like Chaol or really not like Chaol. So, but I will start by saying this book was kind of a rough start for me. It's strange because in the previous books that, you know, in the series by Sarah J Maas, I never had a problem at the beginning of the books being drawn into it. It was when we started getting into the middle of the books where I started to feel like they dragged on. And the books were like that until just the last one, Queen of Shadows, which I thought was solidly paced, kept my interest through the whole thing. This one, though, has been, weirdly, for the first time, a slow start. I've had a hard time getting into it. It has been getting better. The last few chapters have done a good job at keeping me engaged, and I feel kind of like the pace is picking up for things to get going. But man, I gotta tell you, the first maybe 12 chapters of this book, I found it hard to keep my attention. So I was a little bit discouraged to see that. But I'm cautiously optimistic because the last few chapters have been getting better. So this one, I guess because our characters are in different areas, which I do enjoy that. I think it can be done in a more interesting way in certain stories by having groups of characters in separate places doing different things. And that's what we've got going on here. So we've got Elide, who's a citizen of Terrasen, or a former citizen of Terrasen. She knew Aelin many years ago, and she's eager to get back up to Terrasen and join Aelin. She wants to offer like her services, whatever she can do to help with, you know, the reestablishment of the kingdom or the queendom or whatever it is that we're calling it. That has yet to be established. Elide got dropped off by the witches to be able to start heading north. She's got to meet up, of course, with Aelin because she wants to offer her allegiance. She's also got to find this crazy person, Selena Sardothian or whatever, and give her this rock that Kaltain gave her. She still has no idea that this thing is a word key. She kind of suspects there's something strange about it, though, because she kind of senses like some weirdness with this rock that she's carrying, but she doesn't really know what's going on. So as she's wandering through the forest, she starts getting the feeling that she's not alone, and she's getting lost. It's been a really frustrating journey for her. And in the middle of one day, as she's just trying to get some water, she comes across Lorcan. Lorcan, of course, is one of the Fae. He's one of Maeve's team, and he knows Rowan, so he's been hunting a lead. Or I guess he started off hunting her, but now he's just mostly intrigued because he can tell that she's not avowed, but he doesn't really know what's going on with her, so he's like tracking her. Well, he pops out one day as she's trying to just get water to fill up her canteen, because he senses like there's a bunch of things coming. So they both run because they don't know what's coming after him. Turns out it's these weird creatures that I believe they're called Ilkin, and they're one of the unholy experiment creatures that Erwin, like the Val King, has been creating in the mountains. So they're these really gnarly creatures that are kind of immune to being like attacked in ways that would kill most normal creatures. And they also seem to have some kind of immunity to Lorcan's magic, which is, his magic is pretty powerful. So Lorcan himself, even as like massively powerful and experienced and revered as like the ultimate warrior as he is, even he's freaked out by these creatures. He's never encountered anything that has the kind of immunity to what he can do in a battle as these creatures do. These creatures are hunting a lead. Lorcan manages to get rid of some of them. A lead manages to outsmart one of them, which I thought was very clever. And she and Lorcan end up meeting up again together. They have a conversation. They kind of have a meeting of the minds. They both agree that they're going to kind of do a quid pro quo in the style of Silence of the Lambs a little bit, where Lorcan promises not to like hurt her, and she like in exchange they're going to be giving each other like information and kind of supporting each other as they both decide to go north together. And that is not a lot happened. Like, we didn't see them very much in the first quarter of the book, but that's where we're at right now. I find them to be an interesting dynamic. I would like to know more, because Lorcan knows that Aelin and Selena are the same person. You know, he knows what word keys are, obviously, but he doesn't know that she has one. So it will be very interesting to see their time together. What is going to go on with that? So at the end of the last book, we saw, you know, Aelin is heading north to Terrasen. She's trying to get back to it sounds like where the palace is, the crown seat in Orinth. And she's heading up there, and along the way, it sounds like she's going to be trying to meet with some potential allies, like the local lords. She does end up meeting with this dude, Darrow, who is one of the lords, and it does not go according to her plans, but I have to say I was pretty satisfied. I was pretty satisfied at this meeting. So she meets up with this lord who is connected. He sounds actually like a pretty good dude. He's solidly loyal to the country. He was solidly loyal to Aelin's family when they were ruling, and it seems like he genuinely just wants what's best for the country, which I can totally respect that. So he meets up with Aelin. Aelin expects him to just be like ecstatic that she's rolling back up into the country and is planning to take over as the queen. Darrow's not so much interested in that. And he says actually what I said for quite a bit of the last book. He basically told her, look, you're a child. You've been gone for years. You've been working with the enemy. And now you think you can show up here and just be like, I'm the queen now. No, we're not going to do that. Nobody here wants you to do that. You have not proven that you are capable of doing that. And I was like, you know what? Good for you. I am so glad that this author had somebody say it, because I think it was even at the end of my last video when I was talking about Queen of Shadows. I was like, look, I myself, if I am minding my own business as a citizen, and all of a sudden some child, like teenager, this kid comes in and is like, I'm just gonna be in charge of you now and and the country, and you all are just gonna be okay with that, I'd be like, no, I don't think so. I don't think we're gonna be okay with that. I'm not amenable, and No. How about no? How about we don't do that? And so I'm glad. I'm glad that now this book is going through. Aelin is going to have to prove that she's at least somewhat capable of earning the throne. And I was like, you know what? Good. That's way more interesting than just having her go up there and everybody falling all over themselves to be excited that she's back. She has to go through a process of proving that she is capable of being a leader. And I mean, it's unknown if it's due to her age because she is super young. She's like 19, or if it's just that's who she is. Totally unknown. She's not a person that I would say is a good candidate to rule an entire country. So we're watching her as she goes off now. She knows she's got to prove herself because all of the lords up there are not just going to let her go in and take the throne. And I was like, you know what? That's really good. That's way more realistic than what I thought was going to happen. So I'm glad that this is how the author chose to proceed with Aelin's storyline. Right as this meeting concludes with Darrow, where she learns all of this and she's very angry, she learns that there is an impending attack from the witches. They're going down to Rifthold. The plan is to destroy the city. She assumes they're going to kill Dorian, and she's like, oh my god, we've basically left Dorian like totally by himself. What are we gonna do? She decides to send Rowan down because Rowan has hawk form. He can get there like super fast, so she sends him down. She is planning on going down south. She's gonna try to get some allies from, I believe, the Dead Islands, like the pirates. She wants to get them. She wants to see if she can rally some forces and show the lords in the north that she can bring something to the table to actually participate in protecting and ruling Terrasen, which I thought. I really liked the pirate. I mean, of course I liked the pirate situation in the prequels. Of course I did, because I have like a literary obsession with pirates. But I did, so I think it'll be fun to see that again. I believe we're gonna be going back to exactly where Aelin was in that prequel story. So I'm excited. I'm excited to see what happens there because she really disrupted the pirate situation the last time she was down there. So we'll see. So Rowan he flies down to Rifthold, but he's too late. What he finds when he gets there is a city in ruins. And so Dorian, he learned at the end of the last book, after the Valg possession that had taken over him for like all of the last book, that ended. So now he's just coming to terms with everything that he did while he was possessed. Coming to terms with the fact that he killed his father, the King of Adarlan. He's coming to terms with the fact that he has a ton of magic and he doesn't know how to use it. And he's trying to figure out how he's going to rule a kingdom. Poor Dorian is going through a lot. Like, he still misses Sorsha. He's alone in Rifthold because everyone else is off doing their own thing. And Kale is supposed to come back once he finishes his healing or whatever, but it's kind of unknown when that's going to be. But Kale's going to be the hand of the king, so it's presumed Kale's going to come back at some point. But until then, poor Dorian is just sitting by himself in Rifthold. He's a prime target for the witches. Manon has been told to go in. They can do whatever to Rifthold, but they're supposed to take Dorian alive because he's going to be serving some purpose for the Valg King. So she goes down there, and she comes in as some of the other witches had gotten there before her, like different covens had gotten there, and they're about to kill Dorian. Like, they got him kind of cornered in his quarters, but Manon comes in, and initially she makes it seem like she's going to come in and she's taking over the situation and she's going to get Dorian, but she ends up killing the other witches and basically telling Dorian, like, you got a GTFO. So that was an interesting twist, particularly because Manon is like my favorite character in this series. I think she's the most interesting. I think she has the most potential. I think she's the most complex. I just really like Manon, and I like her even more after the first quarter of this book because what she did with Dorian, again, totally, not what she should be doing, not what she's been trained to do, but she decided he's got to get free. She recognizes that the Valg King is not something that can be left unchecked, and she realizes that the witches should not be aligning themselves with him. So it was like A plus, Manon, A plus. Dorian and Rowan escape because Rowan shows up literally right at that moment and is prepared to save Dorian from, everything that's going on. So Dorian and Rowan escape together. They end up on a little boat. They're heading south. They're going to meet up with some other people. That's actually the last really that we see. I mean, we see briefly Dorian and Rowan on their little boat as they're like making their escape, and Rowan shares with him some of the difficult things he's had to go through. But we haven't really seen more from Dorian at this point, but still it was pretty significant. Dorian is escaping and he's going to try to rally some allies to come back and protect the city, because obviously Rifthold is in ruins, so it sends like a really bad message if your kingdom is attacked and your king just like leaves. You probably shouldn't just do that. That's like some bad PR to do that, and which, to his credit, Dorian recognizes. So he's going to try to figure something out. Manon, though, gosh, do I love her. So she goes back to meet up with all of the witches and her grandmother. The other witches, specifically like the heir for the Yellow Legs, she tells everybody like, hey, Manon totally killed like all these witches at this Rifthold attack and then like let Dorian go. So Manon shows back up to all of the witches, and the witches want to put her on trial. So they do, like immediately, and Manon lies, which she really hasn't ever done before, not to her grandmother. She denies purposefully killing any witches, and she basically blames Dorian escaping on the Yellow Legs witch that she killed, and really does her best to deflect blame, to not let on what's really going on in the situation. The witches decide, okay, you know what, we believe you. However, there were still like a bunch of Yellow Legs that died, and so there's like a blood debt that's got to be handled. So they decide the most reasonable solution is that Manon's best friend and her second in command, Astrid, should be executed instead of Manon being executed, which of course Manon is very upset about, because they're like BFFs, and it's her cousin and it's her second in command. So Manon struggles with this, with the idea that her friend is going to be put to death. Manon's been struggling a lot emotionally with things that she knows she shouldn't be struggling with, because her programming as a witch tells her like, you shouldn't be struggling with these things. But more and more she's having all of these feelings that should have been wired out of her. She decides she's going to invoke the right to be the executioner of her friend. So she goes in there, Astrid, all the witches are already in there. Everybody is watching this because it's like a whole big deal to have a witch executed. So Manon comes in and like goes through the motions pretending that she's going to do the execution, but at the last minute she tells like her group of 13, she tells them to run. So they take Astrid and they flee to get on their wyverns and like GTFO this place. Manon decides to brawl with her grandmother. I would have loved to see a even more drawn out battle, because I feel like we only got a little touch of how crazy it felt. Kind of like, Yoda in the prequel movies, where you always see Yoda, he's like little old man, he's using his little cane, he's like slow and grunting. But then all of a sudden in the prequels, when it's time to fight Palpatine, he's like flipping like somersaults all over. That's what this felt like. Because Manon's grandmother is a super old lady, right? But all of a sudden she's brawling with ease with Manon, and I found it very entertaining. I really wanted to see more of it. Manon does get pretty severely injured, but she doesn't manage to end up like killing her grandmother. However, Manon does escape. She like jumps off the balcony. Her wyvern catches her. It's like a very emotional thing, and they escape. They're chased by some of the other witches, but they end up losing them. Where I just left is Manon going to meet the rest of her group of 13. They can rally together. I'm very excited to see what's going to happen with Manon in this book. Seriously, she is my favorite. Something in her snapped like right before she had to execute her friend. she finally overcame that last barrier where she realized that she was born with a soul. She wasn't born soulless like she's always been told. She was born with the ability to make choices for her behavior. Like, she doesn't have to do these things like that she doesn't want to do that go against what she feels is right. So she had this huge paradigm shift that just like it was something, it just connected for her right in that moment. And so I think it will be so interesting to see, because it also turns out Manon is a queen of a different witch coven. So she now could have her own throne if she wants it, and potentially rally those witches to maybe ally with Dorian and Aelin. Maybe we could do that. She already has been amenable to helping out both of them. I think that's the obvious progression for this character, is for her to go back, because she's learned that the Crokins, which is the coven that she's the queen of, they've been trying to find her for like over a century. So it seems like they're very interested and welcoming. They want her to come and rule them, or at least be part of their coven. They want that. So it would make sense for her to seek them out and see if she can persuade them to ally with Dorian and with Aelin against this crazy Valg King dude. All signs point to that's where the author is going with Manon's storyline, and you know what? I'm here for that. So Aelin, after she sends Rowan down to meet up with Dorian, she and Adian and Lysandra, as they're heading to the Dead Islands, they make a stop. They make a stop at like this temple that I believe it's referred to as something like Brandon's temple, because it's the first place that he set foot on the continent way back in the day when he first came over. So she stops there and she sees a bunch of enemy troops have occupied it. She decides that she's going to end that occupation and reclaim the temple. So she does that. Very impressive display of fire. A lot of symbolism for the locals. She wants them to have a really positive feeling and loyalty towards her. So she makes it into a big show. She and Adian and Lysandra turn this fight into a big show for them to make it very persuasive and like awe-inspiring for the locals. In that temple, when she's by herself, she ends up having a ghostly meeting with Brannon. He tells her that she needs to take the word keys down to, I think it's the Stone Marshes, because that's where like the lock is, that she can put all those keys in there and it locks it up. And I don't know, apparently that'll like get rid of the Valg threat or whatever forever. So she's like, okay, well, it would be great if you'd give me more information, but of course you're not going to do that. And of course he does not, in fact, do that. He like disappears. And right as he disappears, this dude shows up. He used to be the head of the guards when she was in that prison camp in Endovir. And so he shows up. He's been possessed by a Valg. It ends up, he's the dude that the Valg King, he's like channeling through this dude remotely, and he and Aelin have kind of like a magic battle between them, kind of. Aelin's magic is somewhat ineffective because he has put like iron in this other dude's body that he's using, and so Aelin's magic can't like really affect it. It's a whole thing. Basically he taunts her and she sasses him, and they like shoot magic-y stuff at each other, and that's really what happens there. Except now she knows that ultimately she needs to get to the Stone Marsh lock in order to actually, I would imagine that's going to be the end goal, is to get there with all the word keys and throw it in, and I don't know, hope for the best. So far, I think the setup potential here for this book is interesting. I hope the pacing continues the way that it has been the last few chapters. I'm probably going to end up doing another update after I finish maybe like chapter 38. I think that'll be about like the 50% mark for this book, so that might be about where I come in again. All right, I just finished chapter 37, and I am happy to say that this quarter of the book that I just finished got a lot more exciting than the first quarter of the book was. So a lot easier to read. I was more eager to read it, and there was a lot going on, so it made me want to keep reading, and I have to say I'm extremely relieved that it seems like the author has improved to where the middle of the books aren't dragging anymore. I don't know why the beginning of this one felt like it was really dragging, but we're fixed now, so fingers crossed the rest of the book remains the same way. So unfortunately, we didn't get to see much of Manon in this quarter, which, I mean, she's my favorite character, so I was hoping for more. We only got one, maybe 2 chapters of her. She's extremely injured from the battle with her grandmother, so what we did see of her, she was mostly in and out of consciousness, kind of recovering in the wilderness. She does discover that she's being hunted by this Valg creature that was sent by the Valg King Erewhon to hunt her down. It sounds like he wants her brought back so he can do, I don't know, some kind of unholy experimentation probably, because that seems like that's what they're all about. But luckily, even though Manon is extremely injured, her wyvern managed to, if not kill this creature, then like pretty severely injure it, and the wyvern was able to take Manon away, and that's really like the last that we've seen of Manon. She's, like I said, she's in and out of consciousness, and that's why we're not really seeing much of her right now, so I'm hoping we can back up with her soon and see where she's gonna go next. I would imagine she's probably gonna try to find the rest of her 13 before they would probably head to the Wastes or wherever the Crokins might be. That's my guess for future Manon. We'll see if I'm right. We did get to see more of Lorcan and Elide, and I have to say I really enjoy them as an odd couple. They don't trust each other really, but they need each other, but they're trying to figure each other out. So I will not be surprised if they end up as romantic interests. They bizarrely have some good chemistry between them, or at least chemistry that makes them interesting to watch, like read their interactions. I've enjoyed that. I'm hoping they won't be separating soon. The story is setting it up to where Lorcan could be just leaving Elide soon, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe circumstances will change and he will find a reason that he has to stay with her. They have a dynamic that I want to keep reading, so I'm really hoping that we can continue to see more of them finding a reason to stay together. But again, we didn't get that much of them in this quarter, which of course was disappointing. They're pretending to be married right now as they travel along with a carnival troupe. So there's potential for a little bit of hijinks here. I'm kind of hoping that the author is going to bring some more in, because God knows I love hijinks. I guess we will be seeing what happens with Lorcan and Elide. Most of this quarter of the book took place in Skulls Bay with the pirate lord Rolf, and everyone seems to be converging on this point. So we had Rowan and Dorian, they made it there first. Aelin, Lysandra, and Adian showed up. We do learn that there's this giant armada coming to Eelway from Maeve, and nobody is really sure what she's going to use this for or not, because like the Valg are spreading, so it could be that Maeve is either potentially going to ally with Aelin or perhaps ally with the Valg, even though that would be super weird because like centuries ago she fought them. It's unknown, and it's a bit unsettling what Maeve is doing right now with this armada. And we also learn, of course, that, as I said, the Valg, they're spreading, so they've got their own armada stationed in part of like the Dead Islands where Skulls Bay is. So Rolf is very concerned about all of this, understandably so, because it's encroaching on his territory, but he doesn't want to ally with Aelin because once she shows up, he realizes that she is, of course, the same person as Selena, the same person that he's pissed at for like destroying the island and his business several years ago. And so he really, really doesn't want to be partners with her because he doesn't trust her, understandably so. We also see with Fenris and Gavriel showing up. They're, of course, they're Fae that are also blood sworn to Maeve, just like Rowan used to be, so like they all used to be buds. Sorry, but I refuse to call them a cadre. I've had enough of the word cadre to last me a lifetime. Frankly, I'm done with it. So I'm not going to use it. I'm gonna try for this to be the only time in this video where I use that word, except maybe in my wrap up at the end, I will briefly touch on what is so aggravating to me about the use of this word over and over and over and over. I'll just call him, I'll call these guys former bros. They're former friends, kinda, right? They like all swore the blood oath to Maeve together, fought together. They're like bros, whatever. These guys also show up to meet with Rolf because they're trying to hunt down Lorcan because apparently they're supposed to kill him because Maeve believes that Lorcan has like betrayed the blood oath. So these dudes are over here trying to find Lorcan to follow that through. They also decide, hey, why don't we stay here for a bit? If Lorcan's gonna be showing back up, then I guess we'll just wait here for him. Also, they kind of reluctantly decide to ally with Aelin because they realize that she's got a lot of power and also she can help them ultimately pursue Lorcan. So they reluctantly agree. We see Aedion and Gavriel meet for the first time, and of course, Gavriel is Aedion's father. Neither of them knew this until like just now, and in fact Gavriel didn't even know he had a kid, so this is huge news to him. They finally meet, and Aedion for some reason like goes off on Gavriel and is basically like, I hate you so much. Basically he had an Aelin like freak out at Gavriel, by which I mean he had a freak out for reasons that don't really make sense. He's apparently blaming Gavriel for like not being around, but Gavriel didn't even know he had a son. Like he didn't even know that Aedion's mom was pregnant. So like, I don't know how he could be a father to a kid that he didn't even know existed. I don't know. Like, obviously, Aedion is in a glass case of emotion right now. I think it's pretty understandable, but his anger is misplaced here, and it just felt very manufactured. I really don't understand the outrage that he feels at his father. It really reminds me of Aelin's rage at Chaol over Nehemia's death, where I was like, this makes no sense and is clearly just being used as like a plot device to get the characters into a position the author wants them in. But it's doing it in a way that doesn't make sense to me, so I'm not really into it. We'll see how this plays out. Gavriel seems very interested in getting to know Aedion as his son. Seems like he really loved Aedion's mother, and so it'll be interesting to see what happens while they're all in Skulls Bay with, you know, we got the Fae, and we've got Aelin's partners, and we've got Rolf's crew. We come to find out several important things. Rolf has this magical map like on his palms that apparently can show him any treasure that he wants to find anywhere in the world. That would come in really handy. So Aelin wants to use this map. She wants to ally with Rolf so she can use this map to find like the locks that she can lock the word gates or whatever. So she really needs him for that. She also really wants access to like his crew to be allied with her. We also learned that Rolf is apparently the ruling heir of the Mycenaeans. I'm not entirely sure how we're supposed to pronounce that. Once again, throughout this entire series, I debate on how to pronounce things. But apparently Rolf is the last like heir of them or whatever, so she wants to have him gather them so that she can have her own like armada team that she's going to use to fight like the Valg or whatever. She extorts him and is very manipulative and gets him to agree. So they all go out because right at that moment, very inconveniently, there is like an impending Valg attack by sea. They're coming with some sea wyverns and also some ships to try to attack the harbor. So they all go out, and I thought that this was actually done pretty well. I thought it was a pretty interesting like battle sequence that we got to watch over several chapters. So we had Aedion sitting in one of the watchtowers with like a big old spear shooting thing, and Aelin decides to send Dorian to the other watchtower because she basically tells him he's like useless. Well, we'll revisit that in a minute. He wasn't so useless here. Lysandra shapeshifts into a sea dragon, which is part of the mythology of the Mycenaeans, and apparently it's part of the myth that they're only going to return if the sea dragons return. So this was not only a useful battle tactic because they've got some like Valg sea wyvern demon things to fight, but it also helps to reinforce the myth that like all the Mycenaeans are waiting for to see these sea dragons come back. So she jumps in the water. She's a sea dragon now. She's like floating around, getting used to being sea dragony and stuff. So we see Rolf and his crew, Aelin, and then the 3 Fae dudes. They're all going out on Rolf's ship. They're all going to meet the incoming Valg ships like head on, and Aelin's going to try to use her magic to destroy them out there before they can even get to the city. Well, things don't really go as planned. Apparently, Aelin has been so preoccupied on whether or not she didn't stop to think if she should. She's grown too much power without bothering to try to learn how to like control it. So she summons these massive depths of power from within her. She ends up stealing all of Rowan's power, so he's useless, and basically goes so deep into whatever power source she has within her that kind of like melds with the word key that she's wearing at the time into this weird thing that it like channels some hostile goddess into her body, and it really didn't go well. Aelin finally got a handle on it, but it was too late. She ended up destroying the ship she was on, and then a little bit of the incoming Valg ships. So lots of the crew that she was supposed to be allied with died because she couldn't control her power out there. And she, in the process, it drained all of her power. So Fenris, one of the Fae dudes, he ended up using all of his power to rescue her. So now we've got like all these people with no power out there, a bunch of dead or like powerless crew, like Rolf's crew. They're like stranded on a coral reef. And then we've got Lysandra in the water fighting these sea wyvern things. And this was actually, I thought this was one of the best parts of this entire sequence. Seeing the segment where Lysandra is swimming through the bay trying to like attack these sea wyverns and bring them down. She does it almost single-handedly. She does get one close enough to Dorian. He takes that out. Not so useless, was he, Aelin? And then after a very dramatic, like, swimming through the bay because even bigger sea wyverns come in and even more Valg ships come in, Lysandra ends up like, last run, she's injured, she's exhausted, this big old sea wyvern thing is chasing her, and Aedion only gets one shot with that like giant crossbow thing, and he manages to take out the sea wyvern that's chasing her, and she's like super injured, so she just like washes up on shore, and all of like Aelin and all of the Fae dudes, they end up coming on shore. What tiny healing magic they've got left, they're trying to heal her, but it's gonna like take a long time because they've got no magic, and Lysandra is unfortunately super injured. So after all of that, Aedion finally admits, I don't know if to himself or he does tell Lysandra out loud that he like wants to marry her. His thoughts this whole time kind of lead me to believe that like, yeah, he realizes he's super into Lysandra. I think she's super into him, but they've got like, unfortunately they got so much trauma that they're kind of just like dancing around it. So I'm hoping that they can kind of acknowledge once she recovers that like, hey, I kind of like you. I kind of like you too. That's what I would like to see for them. And Aedion is now like pissed at Aelin that she came up with this plan for Lysandra to put her in danger, because he feels like this was a really bad plan and it was done completely in secret with like no input from anybody else who could have talked about how, you know, maybe they should have done this differently instead of just putting Lysandra into the thick of it. So I don't know, we'll see if they like Aelin and Aedion are allowed to have conflict, because it gets rather annoying that Rowan like interjects himself in every situation. Like, nobody can actually have a conversation with Aelin the way that it needs to be done because he just butts in. Like, he won't let her experience the consequences of her poor choices. And frankly, as a reader, it's getting really annoying. He's done this with so many people, and I'm assuming the author wants the reader to be like, oh, he's so protective, he loves her so much. But really, it's like, look, Aelin is a grown adult woman. At least she believes she is, because she wants to like rule an entire country of people. So you should probably get used to her having difficult conversations with people if she's going to actually be the queen. Otherwise, it sounds like you kind of just want her to be a tyrant. So I really hope that this changes as the story goes on, because admittedly, it's getting kind of annoying to see him keep doing that, just interrupting when anyone wants to hold Aelin accountable for like anything that she's done ever. I'm not sure where they're gonna head next. Maybe south to Eelway. I know that they need to gather like the Mycenaean fleet, but they know that something's coming for the city down there. So they've kind of got some of their, like, the Vald King has purposefully spread his forces around, it sounds like, to try to make Aelin choose what she's going to concede and where she's going to focus what power she does have. I don't know. I am excited to read through the next quarter of the book. I think I'm probably going to end at maybe chapter 55. We'll see. We'll see when I get there. I'm going to do another quarter hopefully later today. I do have some time this afternoon. I'm going to try to get through an entire quarter in this afternoon, and then I'll be back. All right, I just finished chapter 55, and I have to say this was really a very excellent, like, action-filled quarter of the book. I was very happy to see that the author would... Oh, my cat's gonna make an appearance in this video. She's been feeling a little bit left out. I was really happy to see that the author, like, has been able to keep that momentum going through the middle of this book. And I would say possibly it's been handled even better than the last book as far as that goes for pacing. So good job, Sarah J Maas, for improving on that. Really, really love to see it. I have, like I said, I've really enjoyed this quarter of the book. There's been so much going on. We've got Aelin and her party of people. So we've got the three Fae, we've got Adian, we've got Lysandra. They decide they're going to head down on a boat to the Stone Marshes. What you doing, baby? You just hanging out? She's just gonna hang out, so I hope that's okay, because I don't have a choice. She does pretty much whatever she wants. Anyway, so they all decide they're heading down to the Stone Marshes to try to find this lock. They end up having one of these visions with Brannon and another one with Elena, and Elena acknowledges that she actually hid the lock in the Stone Marshes herself, so she knows it's there. She also admits that she used it in a way that it wasn't supposed to be used, and so it's like her fault that Erewhon is still free, but she thought that he was going to be locked up forever, so she didn't realize it was going to be as big of an oopsie as it was. We also learned through their interaction with Elena that Mala Firebringer, who is like one of the gods, was likely to be Elena's mother, so that's why their line has all this magic. It's probably why Dorian and Aelin have all of the magic that they do, because it sounds like Aelin has both Brannon, who is super powerful, and Mala as ancestors, and Dorian has at least Mala as an ancestor. I admit that I forget if he is also related to Brannon or not, but still having even one god in your upline. Oh god, I just said upline as though I'm in an MLM. I'm not an MLM. I don't know why I said upline. In your ancestry, having a god in your ancestry is probably gonna do some stuff as far as making you inherit some powers. So I feel like that makes sense. As they're doing this whole sailing thing, suddenly they hear some crazy stuff going on outside, so they all run out on deck to see this thing flying at them. Turns out that it's Manon and her wyvern. Manon is clearly unconscious. The wyvern is flying at them. Right as it gets to them, Manon falls into the sea, but Dorian ends up jumping in, getting her out, bringing her on board. She's unconscious, obviously clearly clearly very injured. So they take her inside, they chain her up because obviously she's like a super deadly witch. They can't really trust her. And they start to heal her, which is nice. She like goes in and out of consciousness a lot. She's very injured from blood loss. Aelin has been trying to question her about a lead because Manon mentions something about a lead, but Manon is so out of it that she can't give Aelin the information that she wants. There does come a point, I think it's, we'll see. I'm kind of into it. I don't know, because I like both characters, but it seems like Dorian and Manon are like super into each other. They've decided they're like hot for each other. So, you know, if you had suggested this to me when I first met Manon in this book, I would have been like, oh, that's probably not good for Dorian because Manon's not exactly known for being like super into having healthy relationships with men. And poor Dorian, this dude has had a real bad track record with women. So I would not have expected to be supporting this relationship as much as I am, but here we are. I kind of think it works in a real weird way. They've both been raised with a lot of expectations. Things have not gone the way that they thought that they would. They're both rulers without kingdoms or queendoms at the moment. And so I don't know, I'm kind of into it. I kind of want this to work out for them. And that is an ongoing theme with a couple of other couples that we're gonna talk about. We also see a really sudden Ilkin attack. Those weirdo flying, creepy, unholy creatures come in and attack the ship that they're on. They want to take Manon back to Morath to be able to, once again, this dude Erewhon is like super into these weird experiments. So he wants to weird experiment on Manon. And she's, you know, obviously she's not interested in that. The rest of the people in the ship, you know, Aelin and her party, they're like, no, I don't think we're going to do that. So they all fight these Ilkin. And they tell Manon that they took her 13 and either killed them or made them into like creatures in Morath. And just because of how often like all of the messengers from Erewhon lie, we don't really have a way to know if this is true or not. Of course, I'm hoping it's not because now, I mean, Manon has a lot of potential to do the things she needs to do, but especially if she still has her little crew with her that can help out. So I'm hoping that didn't just happen. That would be kind of an anticlimactic end for them since we didn't even get to see what happened in the book for them. But I'm presuming we'll find out more probably by the end of this book. But through all of this, we do learn that Gabriel was ready to break the blood oath with Maeve in order to go and actually be with Adian's mother. And Adian learns this as well. Basically everybody in the group learns this, and I'm not sure if it's kind of bringing Adian back down. I don't know why you would blame your father for not being around when like your father didn't even know that you exist. And so I think this explanation makes sense. Apparently Adian's mother made Gabriel leave. Like Gabriel didn't want to, but she was like, I don't want to be with you. Please don't ever like contact me again. And he respected her wishes. So like, I don't know. If Adian's gonna be mad at anybody, I feel like he should be mad at his mother. But considering the circumstances, I don't really think he should be mad at anyone. His mother thought she was doing the right thing. She's pregnant. She knows that if Maeve finds out that she's pregnant by Gabriel, a fae, Maeve's gonna take this baby because apparently fae babies are super rare at this point. And so Maeve is gonna take it. And Adian's mother didn't want that. So that's why she told Gabriel to leave, didn't tell him she was pregnant. And Gabriel, you know what, to his credit, he respected her wishes and wasn't trying to be like, come on, baby, I love you. He wasn't trying to do that. So like, I feel like this just reinforces if Adian continues to be mad at Gabriel, it's just misplaced anger at this point. Like Adian does have Gabriel around now, and Gabriel seems very, very interested in having a relationship with Adian as his father and, you know, as a son. So I don't know. I hope they can work it out. They both seem like good dudes. They both just seem very hurt by the circumstances of everything that happened. So I hope they can get it together to like have some kind of a good relationship. We also see increasingly, and I have to say I do love it, Lysandra and Aedion and their little budding romance slash don't want to really acknowledge it or talk about it because they've both been seriously hurt romance going on. And once again, I'm like, if these two kids can't make it work, because if ever there were a more perfect pairing for these people, I don't know. I don't know they're going to find it. Both Aedion and Lysandra have spent almost their entire lives being used, forced to do things they don't want to do, and now they finally have some freedom. At least Lysandra does. Aedion sworn to Aelin, but he still has a lot more freedom than he did when he was working for the King of Outerlands, so at least that's something. And they're clearly they're both very hesitant, but they're also clearly very into each other, so I hope that will continue to get developed. So apparently Aelin and Rowan finally got it on, like finally, and I have to admit that I just skipped it. Like, I tried, but the way that the author writes this pairing, I find for me to be really cringy. I don't know. I just do. I don't feel that way when it comes to the other pairings that she's got in this book, the way that she writes them. I don't know. There's something about Aelin and Rowan where I'm like, ooh. And so I'm just skimming. I'm skimming the activities. I'm skimming the inner monologues for their sexy thoughts. I'm skimming the external monologues about their sexy thoughts. I'm not into the Rowan Aelin romantic pairing. I'm not against them as a couple, just the way that the author is choosing to write it gives me secondhand embarrassment, and I just can't do it. I really struggle with secondhand embarrassment in media, so I'm sorry if you're out there and you love Rowan Aelin. Look, this is you can love any relationships that you want. You don't need some rando like me to tell you it's okay. Just for me personally, it gives me secondhand embarrassment, and when something makes me embarrassed like that secondhand, I'm like, okay, I have to look away. I can't do this. Let's skip ahead. So they do all arrive to the Stone Marshes finally, and they start to go into it. But I'm going to jump over to some of my other favorite characters in this book because it makes sense to go talk about them now. Of course, I'm speaking of Lorcan and Elide. I cannot tell you how surprisingly pleased I am at this weird pairing. They're a couple that, once again, just like Dorian and Manon, I wouldn't think that Lorcan and Elide would work, but they do. They've got this weirdly appealing chemistry between them, and I'm here to see more of it. I kind of like that, the will they, won't they, although that question is kind of answered by the end of this quarter of the book. So they're traveling together, pretending to be married. They're trying to go north to Terrasen, so they're in this carnival. They're both performing, and as they're going on, they're living their lives traveling together. Lorcan starts to realize that Elide is maybe someone that he finds attractive. So there's a little bit of sprinkling of foreshadowing maybe going on there. The Ilken, of course, attack one night. They're still trying to hunt Elide, and so Lorcan tells her to hide. He ends up taking out all of the Ilken, and he also learns from the Ilken that Elide is not who she's been saying she is. She's a lot more important than she portrayed herself to be to him. So after he takes them all out and the camp is safe again, he goes and he finds her hiding spot, and he's like, hey, yo, so I guess you've been lying about like a lot of stuff. And she's like, yeah, I have, but you haven't been telling me everything either. So they kind of have like a meeting of the minds. As they continue to travel, they learn from some like gossip in a tavern that it sounds like Aelin is not actually in Terrasen anymore, the place where they've been trying to get to all this time. They learn that she's probably in Eelway, so they decide, okay, I guess we have to go south now. Unfortunately, their troop betrays them to some local guards, and so they end up having to flee. In the process of fleeing on this barge, I believe they're on a river barge, Lorcan ends up having to kill someone. Well, it's debatable if he had to or not. I can absolutely see where he's coming from, but Elide was very much not wanting him to kill anybody during their escape, not anybody that they didn't have to, and she feels that he didn't have to kill this other dude in order for them to escape. So they have a big fight about it, and they're both like real mad. And then they don't speak for like 3 days because they're both big mad at each other. And then I laughed so hard because what broke their silence is that a lead got her period and needed supplies, so they end up having a very uncomfortable and like real awkward conversation about her period. And it was just very amusing to see her like really not wanting to talk to this big old fey dude Lorcan about what she needs for her period. So, I mean, as a woman, I can appreciate the awkwardness, especially as like a teenage girl. Yeah, that would be real uncomfortable. That would be real uncomfortable. In order to make sure that she gets the supplies that she needs, Lorcan pulls into this little like village so they can do some shopping. So she goes off to do some shopping. He goes off to do some shopping. And it sounds like somehow, I'm not clear how. This is kind of a plot hole. I'm not entirely sure how this happened, but Aleed's uncle Vernon is waiting for her in the shop that she goes into, so he and some Ilkin are like kidnapping her to take her back to Morath. Lorcan has realized that like something is super wrong in this town, and so goes to look for Aleed, and he's like mentally beating himself up that he left her alone. And so he does find her. He's waiting to ambush the Ilkin and Vernon as they come out to bring Aleed into a box. He ends up rescuing her, but she also, that's one of the things I really like. She also participates in the rescuing. That's one of the things I do enjoy about their dynamic too, is that Lorcan is like the super mega powerful, like one of the best warriors ever, Fae. And yes, he comes in and he does a lot of like really cool, powerful stuff. But Aleed is not just some damsel in distress. Like, she clearly is not on the same scale as Lorcan as far as skill and power. But she does what she can. She doesn't just sit there and be like, oh, save me. She doesn't do that. Through her lifetime of having to look out for herself, take care of herself, know that like nobody's coming to save her, she's learned she has to be self-reliant. So she takes as much of the matter into her own hands as she can, which I really appreciate. And so they both end up taking out these Ilkin together, and Vernon unfortunately gets away. However, I thought it was very sweet that like, cause she's always injured. She's got that long time ankle injury, but you know, this was very distressing for her. And so Lorcan picks her up and carries her back to the barge and is like, I'm always going to like make sure that I find you, I promise. And I was like, oh my God. See, now why can't the romantic relationship between Rowan and Aelin be like that? Like, that's not cringy. That's like sweet. And he's like, you know, Lorcan is coming to realize that he really is into Aleed, and their thoughts about each other, they don't make me embarrassed to read it. Like, that's all I want. That's all I want. I'm just really, really into their relationship. They also feel like, as they're traveling down instead of Eelway, Lorcan feels this magical push telling him to go towards the stone marshes. It's part of his magic that he has that kind of like guides him through his life. So he's learned to trust it, and he tells Aleed like, I don't know exactly why we're being told to go to the stone marshes, but like, this is what I feel like we should do. So they do. They go to the stone marshes and they believe that Aelin is in there, but it's like massive marshland, so they can't see her or any of the party. They end up walking in because they're going to try to find her. So it's a multi-day trek they're going through, and they're super tired. There's bugs everywhere. There's like weirdo creature, like evolved creatures everywhere in these marshes. It's really not like an appealing place that sounds like you want to be. In fact, it sounds like the author was heavily inspired by the Dead Marshes in Lord of the Rings. So that's like what I pictured the entire way through this thing, is the Dead Marshes, except with a bunch of like ruins sticking up. They finally get to like one of the ruins that they're going to be able to use as shelter to get some sleep. So they go in there, they're laying down, they're next to each other, and they start having like a heartfelt conversation. And one thing leads to another, and they start getting it on. And I was like, okay, this kind of went from like 0 to 60, but I'm not mad about it. It makes sense. And you know what? Makes a lot more sense than like all those months that Aelin and Rowan were apparently sleeping in the same bed and wanting to have sex, but apparently didn't for like, I don't know, reasons. Like that's not realistic for adults to sleep in the same bed for months with someone that you are extremely attracted to and have nothing happen. But thankfully that's not the approach the author took with Lorcan and Elide. They didn't get fully into it, but man, they were on the freeway getting there. They were almost at that off ramp to be able to get to their destination when suddenly Lorcan jumps up and he looks out like the window and he sees this mass of like Ilkin flying at them. He tells Elide, look, we gotta go. This is not gonna be good. There's way too many. Then, okay, so I'm gonna jump back over to Aelin and all of her party. She's of course with Rowan, Fenris, Gabriel, Adian, Lysandra, and Manon. And so they're all going through the marshes. They finally get to the ruins temple where the lock is going to be. And so they find this chest. They know what's in there. They're debating what to do about it when all of a sudden one of them, maybe it's Rowan. Dorian too. Did I leave Dorian off when I said who all is there? I apologize, Dorian. I don't mean to forget you. I don't think you're useless like some other people in your party do. Dorian is also out there with them, which is important because like he's a huge magic user. They're all standing around debating, what do we do with this? When all of a sudden, I think it might be Rowan, feels the presence of Lorcan, except it's not just Lorcan's presence. He feels Lorcan's magic, which is, he says it's a warning for them. And so they look around and they see suddenly like this giant swarm of Ilkin coming at them because Lorcan has been like sending out magical like warning throughout these marshes to try to get to the party and let them know like, hey, danger is coming. You need to get prepared. So the group all sets up to fight these Ilkin. Aelin wants to use the word key again, you know, the same word key that like killed a bunch of her own people back in Skulls Bay. And she totally lost control and had a god take over her body and was about to slaughter an entire town. Yeah, she wants to do that again. So I don't know. She also is like really emotionally manipulative about it when Rowan is like, this is a bad idea. I'm not gonna let you do this. She's like, well, I'm gonna do it anyway, and then ends up saying, yeah, I know, just add this to the long list of like why I'm such a bad person. When somebody does that, just know like you are being emotionally manipulated / possibly abused, depends on the circumstance, but like that's an incredibly manipulative thing to do. Don't do that. And I've noticed more and more with Aelin that a lot of what she does is really manipulative. She doesn't just do it with her like the outsiders either. She was of course very manipulative with Captain Rolfe, King of Aderlin, you know, Arabin, other people that she's like, she's using them to get to, you know, the ends justify the means. But she's not just manipulative with those people. She's manipulative with people close to her too. And that's, oh man, I'm gonna have some thoughts on Aelin at the end of this video. I guess I'm gonna mull over what I'm actually thinking about some of her behavior that we've seen along the way. So where this quarter just left, everyone is getting into position to fight this incoming horde of like 500 creatures. And I don't know, it's 500 against like 8 people. And admittedly, like we got 3 full-blooded fae and like 2 half fae. So, I mean, they got a fighting chance, and Dorian is like a mega magic user, and Manon is one of the most impressive warrior witches of all time. Lysandra is really good with her, you know, her shape-shifting fighting abilities. So the odds aren't looking good, but considering especially they've got those 3 fae, and especially if Lorcan manages to show up to them, unknown if he will because they're pretty far away, I think, but if he does, like, he, I think, is the most powerful slash skilled warrior of all of them, so that will be a benefit too. That's what I'm about to dive into. Gonna see how this battle turns out. I'm actually quite surprised that we're not further along in the story right now, and so I'm assuming there's going to maybe end on like a big cliffhanger with a lot still to do, because then the next book I think we jump to Kale, right? And then maybe the final book it would be wrapping up the cliffhanger and all the series of events, eh? Who knows? I'll be back. Next time you see me, I will have my thoughts on the final part of this book and then just my overall thoughts on this book in general. So I'll see you shortly. All right, let's talk about the last quarter of this book. I was really pleased to see that the pacing continued, and what Sarah J Maas does in the previous books to this, she did in this one as well, which is she's able to make a lot of pieces come together at the end. And there's like a lot of action in the wrap up, so it makes you want to like keep reading. And this one did end on a cliffhanger, which I suspected was going to happen since the next book is like a parallel novel, but it completely diverges from the setting that we've seen in this one. I was really pleased to see that what I felt was solid pacing continued through the end of this book. It made me want to keep reading it. In fact, I did finish the last quarter of this book in just 2 sittings because it made me want to keep turning the pages. So when a book does that, I have to give credit to the author. I think she did a really good job in making me want to see what was going to happen next. So awesome. I love to see that. We start right out, of course, because where I ended before was with the impending Ilkin attack in the Stone Marshes. So they do come, they're flying in, and unfortunately Lorcan and Alid do not get to the group in time. So Lorcan has to protect Alid. He uses his dark, like basically the last of his dark magic as a shield to protect them as much as possible from the magic that's going to be happening. And Aelin basically unleashes all of her magic at these things, and Dorian and Rowan are also doing what they can. Basically everyone is participating every way they can, but Aelin releases just a tremendous amount of magic power at these things and takes out the entire flying horde. After the end of the battle, Fenris and Gabriel suddenly disappear, and they reappear at Lorcan and start fighting with him. Alid is very upset to see this, so she ends up like throwing herself between Lorcan and Gabriel. I think it's Gabriel that she throws herself between. He accidentally attacks her instead of Lorcan, and he like stops immediately. He's very upset because of course he doesn't want to hurt this random girl. Gabriel and Fenris don't even want to fulfill the blood oath to hunt down Lorcan and kill him, but like, especially after seeing the end of this book, the blood oath seems compulsive. Like anyone who takes the blood oath does not feel they have a choice in the matter. They are compelled to complete whatever the wish is of the person who controls the blood oath. So they're forced to attack Lorcan in this situation because that is the mission that Maeve sent them on. They call a brief truce so that they can heal Alid because she, like, her arm got like jacked up in this. And so they're all kind of like pacing around, and then Rowan walks up and he's like, you two, meaning Fenris and Gabriel, you're not gonna hurt Lorcan because Lorcan and Alid are under Aelin's protection. So apparently these are some kind of magic words that can like override the blood oath orders. I don't know. I feel like that's kind of, I'm gonna need to know more about this loophole, because it really seems like anybody who has sworn a blood oath can just kind of like get out of orders that they don't want to do if some third party says the right magic words to order them to do something else. I don't know. I'm gonna need more information about how this blood oath situation works. And in this moment, both Aelin and Manon reunite with Alid, and it's a pretty emotional moment. You know, Alid has been looking for both of these women for quite a long time. Aelin didn't even know that Alid was still alive, really, until just recently she heard Manon mention Alid's name. And of course, Manon has been worrying about what happened to Alid. After they dropped her off in the wilderness, she hasn't known what's happened to Alid. It was a somewhat emotional reunion, and it was nice to see a side of Aelin where she was expressing gratitude and regret to Alid, you know, for like her mother having to, because Alid's mother died to save Aelin many years ago on that night when they all came to finally kill Aelin. Alid's mother was the one who like sacrificed herself to try to buy Aelin time to escape. So this is the first time Aelin has gotten to really express that gratitude to anyone that matters, and so it was nice to see. And of course, like, Manon being so relieved to see Alid, that was nice to see a little bit more of her. I don't know that I can call it humanity because she's not human, right? She's a witch, but I hope everybody knows what I mean when I say Manon expressing humanity. Manon expressing feelings. How about that? Feelings other than murderous rage. Manon expresses those towards Alid, so that was good. Alid also takes this opportunity to give that word key that she was carrying from Keltaine to Aelin and explain what happened. So that was emotional too. Aelin realizing, you know, what Keltaine did, what happened to her, and how much like just giving her that cloak so long ago really meant something. So that was emotional to see. And everybody in Aelin's group at that point starts to kind of see Lorcan in a different light because they realize Lorcan's been hunting these word keys and doing it out of the goodness of trying to serve Maeve, but she only sees his behavior as betraying the blood oath. So he is literally risking his life to hunt these things down. And Aelin's entire party sees that, like, regardless of how important getting these word keys was to him, he didn't take it from Alid, and he knew that she had it, and he let her keep it, and he let her bring it to Aelin. And that was a pretty big indicator, especially to Rowan and Fenris and Gabriel, that there's more to Lorcan than just ruthless pursuit of what he wants. We also see after the battle, they all go back to the chest, right, that the lock is supposed to be in, but they realize there's really only a mirror in it, and it's got like the same symbol as the Eye of Elena, which of course Manon has explained is actually a witch symbol. It's not. She gets very offended at the idea that it's anything to do with Elena, that it's actually a witch symbol, and it's very old. She explains the mirror is a witch mirror, and that means that it's got some magical powers. Most witch mirrors, it sounds like, are storage for some kind of powerful magic that can be used, but Manon doesn't believe that this mirror has that kind of power, that she doesn't get that impression from it. She's not initially sure what this witch mirror is even for, but we do learn, because of the discussion of the witch mirrors, it kind of connects for Manon why she was seeing these mirror towers being built by Erewhon. Apparently he's going to try to use a massive amount of power in these mirrors directed at the armies when he finally goes up against them to like take over the continent or the world or whatever. So all these pieces connect that he's using witch mirrors to do this, and that's why he's got these giant towers, and it's potentially incredibly devastating depending on the kind of magic, the level of power in it that are in these towers. So after learning all these things and having these discussions, they finally start to make their way back to the harbor so that they can start to sail out, except when they get there, there's a giant fleet of ships waiting for them, and they all kind of have like an oh shit moment because they don't have a super powerful fleet. And they're also like all drained of magic from that giant battle they just had with that horde of Ilkin, and they're tired from going through the stone marshes for days and days. So they're like, I don't even know what we're gonna do here. But then all of a sudden, like, the leader of this fleet shows up, and it's Ansel, who is now the queen. I believe she's the queen of the Wastes, but we know her from one of the prequel novellas where she was in the Red Desert when Aelin got sent there to train with the Silent Assassins. She betrayed everyone so that she could get the power she needed to go back to her homeland and retake it from the Conquering. Aelin had the opportunity to take her out when they were both in the Red Desert together because, you know, after everything that happened, Aelin knew who was responsible. She gave Ansel the opportunity to escape, and they've both never forgotten that. So apparently months ago, Aelin directly contacted Ansel and told her, like, you owe me a life debt, bro. You better get down here with like an army for me. So to Ansel's credit, she did. I was hoping that we would see Ansel again because I thought she was a really interesting character in the novellas. So Ansel is back, and she's brought a pretty good sized military force to band together so that everybody can fight Erewhon. So they all get on the ships because they're gonna start sailing out. I think they're all pretty much heading for Terracin at this point, except, well, first I guess I should mention Manon and Dorian finally have sex. That did not make me cringe in the way that Rowan and Aylin's like sexy scenes do. So I think that it really is just that the author writes them so differently, and the way that she is choosing to write Aylin and Rowan in like sexual situations, just good for Dorian and Manon. They finally get together, and Manon realizes, hey, I really like this guy. And I think Dorian realizes, like, hey, I really like this lady too. But regardless, Dorian and Manon finally get together and take their whatever kind of relationship they've got to the next level. I was like, you know what? Good for you two. They both seem super into each other, and I'm like, why not? I'm gonna root for you guys. I'm gonna root for you guys. So good for them. Unfortunately, though, not all is so well, because I think it's like directly the next day, or maybe even immediately after, like they get done. An armada shows up that is not a friendly one. It turns out that it's from Maeve, and she's found them somehow, and she is not very happy about everything that's been going on. She wants Aylin to surrender. She of course wants the word keys because she wants them for herself. So she gives Aylin a day to make a decision as to whether she's gonna surrender or not. And so during this time, everyone is sitting around kind of strategizing what they're gonna do. Rowan disappears for a little bit and like turns into a shapeshifter, like hawk form, flies over to some of Maeve's ships to talk to his cousins. We don't see at the time what he's talking to them about, but he goes to like different ships in Maeve's fleet. In the meantime, Dorian, Manon, and Aylin are talking together about what they're gonna do. Dorian suggests that Aylin and Maeve should go into that witch mirror together due to like some long-standing riddle that he suspects he may have figured out what it's actually supposed to mean. So Aylin and Manon do go into this mirror together, and they see a series of events that are like recorded in the mirror. So they're in like kind of this misty reality as they're watching past events unfold. We see the origin of how the lock got into the stone marshes and Erewhon getting locked up. We see it was Elena. She stole the lock from Brannon, her father, and she used it when it was not supposed to be used. She used it to lock up Erewhon early, when really what was supposed to happen is that Brannon was supposed to use the lock at a point in the future, and what it would do is all of the gods would basically take Erewhon back to their own reality and deal with him there, and then like everything would be locked up, so there'd be Erewhon would not be coming back. Unfortunately, Elena didn't know this, so she thought that her dad was just like dragging his feet on using this thing. She was seeing her people get like killed all over the place, so she thought she was doing the right thing by using the lock to lock up Erewhon. But unfortunately, it was not, because it just kind of postponed things. What we learn is that the lock can only be used once, and it requires a sacrifice of the user. So Brannon was supposed to sacrifice himself to lock that gate and get Erewhon out for good, but he didn't. So it just kind of like passed the buck to a future descendant of Brannon, where it's come down to Aylin is going to have to sacrifice herself in order to use the word keys in the lock, so that the gods can finally take Erewhon out, and he will no longer be in their world to be able to do anything. Aylin reveals that she suspected she's going to have to sacrifice herself for a while in order to get this all to come together and work. Aylin and Manon also see a memory of when Nehemia actually went down and found found this chest herself and had a conversation with the ghosty form of Elena, learned the things that were supposed to happen, learned that Aelin was going to play a massive part in this. Aelin learns that Nehemia knew that she would have to die in order for all of the events to play out like they needed to. I hope that, I feel like that brings some kind of calm to Aelin, or at least I hope that it does, that Nehemia knew exactly what the choice was. She knew that if she went to Rifthold that she was going to die, and she chose to do it anyway because she wanted to help her people. She wanted to help everyone in the fight against Erewhon. So I think that that is a good missing piece of the puzzle. It's something that I have personally suspected for quite a while, probably since Nehemia's death in the book. So after the series of memories that Aelin and Manon have in that mirror, they end up getting dumped onto the beach right next to Elide. Before the battle began out at sea, Lorcan had insisted that Elide be taken to shore so that she could be safe. He didn't want her to be subjected to whatever was going to be happening when these ships actually started fighting. So Elide is on the beach when Aelin and Manon get dumped there. As the fight at sea starts, we see basically a lot of ineffective magic going both ways because both sides have some magic users and they're doing like this shielding stuff. So not a whole lot is going through. And then as Maeve's armada starts getting closer, they start seeing a bunch of different flags on some of the ships. And it turns out to be Rowan's family flag. Rowan in his bird form, when he had gone over to speak to all of his cousins on the different ships, he basically begged them to side with him and with Aelin against Maeve, knowing that it would essentially erase all of their titles, their lands, make it so that they can't really return home while Maeve is still in charge. And so he knew it was like clearly a massive ask to ask them all to do this, basically give up what they know as their lives in order to support him and to rally with them against Erewhon. All of Rowan's cousins decided to side with him, so they come over to Rowan's side and they start helping to fight against the remaining part of Maeve's armada. Lorcan also realizes in this moment that Maeve is not around and that she has gone after Elide on the beach, that she's not actually in the battle at sea. So he at that moment decides he's getting a little rowboat or whatever. He's going to shore because he's got to make sure Elide is okay. So Lorcan leaves the battle at that point, and things start seeming pretty hopeless, frankly, for like Rowan's side. I'm calling it Rowan's side because Aelin's on the beach, right? Aelin's on the beach near Elide, so at this point Rowan is running. It's running things. Things start seeming a little bit bleak for them. They're really tired. They're running out of magic. They're running out of steam. And right at that moment, I thought it was such a good moment. Manon's wyvern finally returned. She's been worried about him for days. Like, he was gone way longer than he was supposed to be when she sent him away. She told him to only be gone, I think maybe like 4 days, but it's been quite a bit longer than that. He decides in that moment to return, and he brings the rest of Manon's 13 with him. So like all 12 of the riders and the wyverns come with him, and they basically like annihilate most of what's left of Maeve's fleet out there. Unfortunately, back on land, things are not going so hot. So not only are Aelin and Manon and Elide on the beach, but Maeve is indeed there. Maeve has killed all of like the soldiers that were supposed to be protecting Elide. She's also got some of her Fae crew with her, and so the plan is to threaten Elide to get Aelin, of course, to do what she wants, make her give up the word keys, and make her surrender, and Aelin really doesn't want to. Lorcan, Gabriel, and Fenris have shown up. The Blood Oath, for one, has drawn them. Maeve has called them to come to her, but also Lorcan, of course, wants to be there anyway because he's trying to protect Elide. He manages to, like, stand next to her. He is ordered at one point to hold her by Maeve, but he's still telling her to like struggle against him and run because he just wants her to be able to get away. Aelin decides that she's not going to let anything happen to Elide, and so she agrees with Maeve to surrender and to go with her. For some reason, they waste a bunch of time like standing on this beach, so they've got Aelin being like held basically, so she can't move. And Maeve's second in command, Karen, I think his name is, he comes in and just like whips her repeatedly. I'm like, you know that you've got like a super hostile Rowan coming, right? Like, why are you just hanging out here? Shouldn't you be like taking her and leaving? This just seems like a really ineffective use of your time. But whatever. So that happens. They finally take her and they put her in an iron box so that she can't use any of her magic. I don't know. I just feel like they shouldn't have wasted a lot of time. They know that Rowan and Adian and probably other powerful warriors are coming, and I feel like they probably just shouldn't have wasted any time. Maeve takes the opportunity before she leaves to strip Lorcan and Gabriel of their blood oaths, and she does it so that it's dishonorable. She also decides that it's more of a punishment to Fenris to keep him under the blood oath because she knows how much he absolutely hates it and hates her. So essentially she wants to punish these dudes like as much as possible. So that's what she does before she leaves. They like get on a little boat and it seems like they kind of like just disappear suddenly. So I don't know. I know that Fenris has the kind of magic, it seems, that can let him like transport others in time, in space at least, if not time. So maybe a form of that. I have no idea, but they like poofed out of vision all of a sudden. So the rest of the party shows up. Rowan, of course, and Adian, they're devastated. They were too late to save Aelin from being taken because they know what's about to happen to her. She's being taken into basically the dungeon. She's going to be tortured by Maeve, at least by Maeve's second in command, if not by Maeve herself. So they're devastated. They want to find her. We also learned that before Aelin surrendered, she managed to stealthily pass the word keys to Manon so that Maeve wasn't able to get them. And that's why Manon just kind of stood back and watched everything unfold because she didn't want to risk anything happening to the word keys. And they all just kind of got lucky that Maeve left without like taking them. I don't know. We also learned that apparently Aelin and Rowan got married a few days ago so that Terrasen could have a legitimate ruler in Rowan. But we also learn at the same time that Aelin and Lysandra got together and planned for Lysandra to shapeshift and pretend to be Aelin pretty much indefinitely. So I guess Lysandra and Rowan would be pretending to rule Terrasen, and the plan was to have like Adian and Lysandra have kids because with Adian's like genes, they would at least look like they belong to the Ashriver family or whatever. Adian is really angry that he didn't know about that part with Lysandra, and Rowan is pretty upset about learning all of these things as well. In this moment, we see Elide is also angry with Lorcan again for like reasons I don't entirely understand. She's pretty mad at him though. So, okay, like she wants him to basically like F off and die. This is essentially, I'm paraphrasing. I'm paraphrasing what she told him in the moment at the end. I don't know, whatever. So as all of this is wrapping up and they're trying to figure out what they're going to do because they know they need to try to rescue Aelin, but they've also got all these other moving pieces they need to deal with. We see more allies show up. We see all of the assassins from the Red Desert show up. Aelin had contacted them, and because she had saved them, of course, when Ansel did her thing down there, they all show up to pay back their debt to Aelin, and so they're going to ally with her. We also see a pretty big group show up that's part of Aelin's family over in Wendelin, where Maeve is. They show up to ally with her as well because they also know not only are they family, but they feel the debt is owed from not coming in and helping like 10 years ago when the King of Adarlan was going on his little conquering spree. Lysandra has already shifted into Aelin so that she can deal with all of these allies, and she knows that like all the armies and stuff are going to need to get coordinated so they can start doing this whole war with Erewhon thing. So at this point the party splits, and we've got Rowan. He's literally flying solo. He goes into like his hawk form to try to chase down and figure out where Aelin is to rescue her. Dorian is going to go with Manon and the rest of her 13. They're going to try to find the third word key. They're also going to try to find some Crokens so that they can get them together as more allies for the fight. And also, of course, Manon just wants to find the Crokens because she's apparently like the Croken Queen. So that's what they're going to be off doing. We got Lorcan, Gabriel, and Alide. She decides to join Lorcan and Gabriel. They're going to be grouped together trying to find Aelin as well. And then finally, Aedion and Lysandra, with Lysandra pretending to be Aelin, they're going to go north to Terrasen to start organizing the armies, getting the battle plans ready to get everything moving. So we've got a pretty solid setup for, I would say, the next, well, not the next book, because the next book follows Chaol, right? But the next portion of this story anyway. But that's all that happened in the last quarter of this book. So let's talk about my spoiler thoughts from this book in general. I really hope that the revelations that Aelin and Manon got when they were in that witch mirror, specifically about Nehemia, I hope that that finally makes Aelin like completely separate from any anger that she has towards Chaol and realize that like it's not Chaol's fault that something happened to Nehemia. Nehemia went into everything knowing that she was going to have to die in the process of helping her people and helping the country and helping the world in this fight against Erewhon. Like, she knew that and she chose to do it anyway, so that I hope that seeing this memory is going to really help Aelin like stop with the misplaced anger towards Chaol and finally accept that like this is the series of events that had to play out. Nehemia knew what she was choosing. It's no one's like fault that this happened. It's Nehemia made a choice, and this was the series of events that had to happen to get us to where everybody is at this point in the story. One of the things that I don't really care for with what keeps coming up in like the relationships between some of the characters is that a lot of the conflict between different characters feels contrived. It feels like it doesn't make sense. For example, at the end of the book, we've got Alide like big mad at Lorcan again, right? And like, I don't understand why. If there is a good reason for it, I don't feel like it was adequately explained. It kind of seems like she's mad that Lorcan didn't do more to rescue Aelin from Maeve when everything was happening at the end, but like, Lorcan was under the blood oath, so he literally didn't have a choice. It's like a compulsion. If you're under a blood oath, you're like forced to do whatever the controller of the blood oath like orders you to do. So Maeve ordered him to do nothing. So like, I'm not entirely sure why Alide is mad, because I don't know what Lorcan could have done. He tried to get Alide safe. His instincts were to come in and save her. Now, I can say, so the reason that Maeve showed up is because Lorcan summoned her. I don't want to say inadvertently, but he didn't do it to hurt Alide or to hurt any of like Aelin or the party. He did it because when they came out of the Stone Marshes and they saw that giant fleet waiting for them, they all thought that that was like an enemy fleet waiting to take them out. Lorcan thought that they had no chance and that the only group that would have a chance against this fleet would be Maeve's. So he like, I don't know, sent out some kind of a signal to Maeve about their location, just like instinctively wanting her to come in and take out that fleet so that Alide would be safe. None of the party except Aelin knew that that would be Ansel and that they would be allies. So like, Lorcan didn't know that the fleet wasn't a threat. If Alide is going to be mad at anybody about this, I feel like she should be mad at Aelin, because Aelin once again didn't share her plans with anyone. Like, a lot of conflict could be avoided if Aelin would just like talk to some people about the things that she's scheming. Aedion is also angry at Lysandra, that Lysandra and Aelin came up with this plan so that Lysandra would be like shape-shifting into Aelin, and the plan was for Lysandra and Aedion to like have kids together that they could pass off as Aelin and Rowan's kids, because Aedion's bloodline, it would make the kids, you know, look like the Shrivers, so the kids would look the way that they're supposed to. And Aedion is like mad at Lysandra about this, but I'm not entirely sure why. he's mad if it's just that he was left out of the decision-making process, because especially because he's involved. I mean, hell yeah, that I understand. But it seems like he's kind of mad that the plan would be for him to have kids with a woman that's shifted to look like his cousin. But I'm like, you know that she can shift out before you all go and like get into bed together, right? Like, you don't have to go to bed with her looking like Aelin. Like, she could look like anybody. This is another example, though, that if Aelin had shared information about what she was planning, a lot of this conflict could have been avoided, discussed, resolved before it was even a thing. And then apparently there's some kind of problem because like Aelin knew that she would, like, Rowan was her mate before Rowan came to this realization. Like, apparently that's a problem because Rowan already had a mate, and that was the woman who died like a long time ago. I'm still not clear why this is a problem. Unknown why this is a problem. Maeve has been like pulling the strings for a long time, and so she orchestrated like Rowan connecting with this other woman a long time ago, and Maeve has basically been waiting for Aelin to be born for like a really long time so that she could put her own plans in motion to get these word keys. But again, I'm not entirely sure what all this has to do with conflict between Rowan and Aelin. I don't know why it's such a problem that Aelin realized before Rowan that they were mates. I don't know. But you know what? All of this kind of centers around Aelin, doesn't it? I've noticed that pattern. So let's talk about Aelin. I started out in this series giving like a lot of grace to Aelin. I know that she obviously extremely abused. Her whole family was like murdered except for Adian. She's been through a lot, right, in her short lifespan. So I figured at the beginning she's just kind of rough around the edges. I read the novellas first, so she started out kind of obnoxious, but some of that kind of changed along the way as the novellas went on. And then we kind of started the process over with the first Throne of Glass book, and where she started out kind of unbearable, but again, some of the rough edges start getting buffed out. But as the series has gone on, unfortunately at this point, most of the time I find her very unlikable. And not unlikable as like an anti-hero, but unlikable as like the things that you do are really not okay, and like your behavior is really not okay. I strongly get the impression that the author wants us to think that Aelin and Rowan, but especially Aelin, are like super badass and like, we're so cool. Like, Aelin's really cool, you guys. You don't, like, come on, you gotta see how cool she is, right? Like, she's so skilled and she's so powerful and like she's amazing and she knows it, and like everyone should be so impressed. And I'm like, is she? Is she though? Is she cool? I don't think she is. I think she's kind of a jerk. She manipulates people. She's a little abusive. Like, she calls people names. Like, even Rowan, she goes around calling him a bastard all the time because he's Fae. Like, makes fun of him for who he is as a person, especially because of his species. I'm like, ma'am, you are not like a strong, independent woman by doing this. You're just an asshole. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, she's outright mean to people, including and maybe even especially Rowan, under the guise of like being cute. But I'm like, this isn't cute. You're just like mean. You're mean to people. She lies to like everybody, even the people closest to her, the people who are like risking their lives to support her and ally with her and go on this journey with her and do like whatever she needs. She lies to them, either overtly or by omission. She's lying all the time. Like, so many problems could be solved if she would just talk to her inner circle about what she's doing, but instead she's just scheming all the time. See, basically she's Littlefinger. She's Littlefinger, but like less clever, because frankly, I liked Littlefinger as a character. He was a really good person that you love to hate. At least I did. Littlefinger was not a good guy. That's not good behavior to have, to be always scheming and like lying all the time and using people, manipulating everyone. Okay, Littlefinger did all this scheming, all this planning, right? And he secretly thought that he was the shit. He secretly was like, I'm the smartest person in every room that I'm in. Like, I'm playing 4D chess here while you all are playing checkers. But he acted like super humble, and he stayed in the shadows. He kept to the background, he made his moves, and he was very good at it for a long time until people started to notice a common denominator in a lot of things that would go wrong. Aelin is just rolling in, and she's very entitled. She's openly braggadocious, like, I'm the greatest person that ever lived. I'm super powerful. Everyone needs to listen to me because I'm the boss. Meanwhile, she's scheming and manipulating and lying. And I'm like, I gotta have something that makes you enjoyable to watch and root for, and I've got very little. Like, I'm not rooting against her at this point, because she does have some redeeming moments, like how emotional she got when she got reunited with a lead. I thought that was really nice, and how she felt as she was watching the memories with Nehemia. So like, there's these moments that give her some relatability. But man, so much of the time am I just like, lady, you are a jerk. You are a jerk. And Sarah J Maas, I know that you insist upon Aelin, and you insist that I like her, but you have not been helping me out with her, not for several books now. I am like clinging on to the tiny crumbs of relatability with Aelin that I can. It's funny because like, I like everyone else in this series. I even like Rowan. Now, don't get me, I don't like their sexy interactions together. I finished reading this book last night, so I've been mulling over it, and I realized that a lot of their sexy interactions bother me so much because the author writes them in a way as though she went on to the I have sex sub on Reddit and like got a bunch of ideas from there and just kind of like threw them in the book when we're looking at like Rowan and Aelin's interactions. If you're unfamiliar with the I have sex sub, it's just like a cringy sub for people who want you to think that they like have sex and have a lot of sex and like, oh my god, and like, look at me, I'm so cool and I know what I'm talking about because like, look at all the sex I have. Like, look, ma'am, Miss Sarah J Maas, we get it. Rowan and Aelin find each other very attractive. And they want to get together sexually like all the time. I get it. I don't know why she ends up writing their sexual interaction in such a different way than she writes the rest of the characters. I find the rest of the characters, like when they're in sexual situations together, I don't find those cringy to read at all. I don't have to skim through those. I'm not like secondhand embarrassment with those. So I do not know what is driving this with just Rowan and Aelin, like their interactions being so different and so like, for me, they're just so full of secondhand embarrassment. I don't know. I'm hoping that the rest of the series will maybe dial it back, because that it's something, like I said, I have to skim those pages because I can't do it. As far as some of the things that we see at the end of the book, like we learn about Aelin's plan to have Lysandra shift and pretend to be her basically indefinitely. I don't even know why it was necessary to get married to Rowan and use that as a justification for like a legitimate ruler for Terrasen, because like everyone is gonna think that, everyone except for this tiny group of like, I don't know what, 7 people is gonna think that the real Aelin is alive and well and ruling Terrasen, right? So like, why did they need to get married so that Rowan could be the legitimate ruler of Terrasen? That part I didn't really understand, at least as far as it being used as justification for Rowan and Aelin to get married. That part didn't really make any sense. If they had just been like, yeah, you know, Aelin and Rowan got married because they super love each other and there's all these battles happening and like they wanted to solidify their bond or relationship and make it more of an official thing rather than just like this fae connection that they have, I could have bought into that. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. They got a lot going on coming up, and they love each other and they want to get married. Like, that's totally fine. I don't know why you got to bring more weird plotting into it. It just seemed weird to bring in this justification of like Rowan being a legit ruler when Lysandra as Aelin is going to be alive and well and presumably ruling over Terrasen. Now, I guess maybe she could have had them get married in case something happens to Lysandra as well. There's no one to pretend to be Aelin anymore. But frankly, I mean, I feel like the ruling, if anyone from the family is gonna rule in Terrasen, why wouldn't it be Aedion? He's legit like part of the ruling family up there. So like why are we ignoring him? Nope, that wasn't addressed like at all. Maybe that's part of the reason that Aedion is mad at this scheming with Aelin and Lysandra. I don't know. I'm gonna hold out hope that maybe this will be more elaborated on when presumably we get Aelin rescued from her captivity that she's in. Maybe all of this will make more sense, but these are just kind of things where I'm like, I don't really know why this reasoning is being used for some of these decisions. Speaking of reasoning for decisions, I really do not know why Maeve released Lorcan and Gabriel from the blood oaths. Like, I get that she wanted to shame them and like this was the worst punishment that she could think of for them, but I feel like she's a very intelligent person and leader and that she should know that this was a really stupid decision to release them from the blood oath, because Lorcan and Gabriel are incredibly powerful fae, like super magical, super powerful warriors. And now she's released them from the only thing that like could stop them from coming after her or allying with her enemies. And I don't know why she would do that. She should have either killed them, right? Or kept them under the blood oath with like super specific orders, like kind of like a genie wish or the monkey's paw. You gotta get real specific or some weird shit's gonna happen. That's kind of how I'm thinking about these blood oath rules at this point. Kind of a monkey's paw, because there's ways to work around it. It could get real creative and blow up in your face if you're not careful. She could like monkey's paw her blood oath orders to these dudes, these super powerful dudes, so that like they can't ally against her. That's kind of the route that I would take if I were her, if I didn't want to just outright kill them, which frankly, that if you were actually done with these dudes, outright killing them would be the best and most obvious choice, because like they're dead. Once they're dead, they're not allying with anybody. Well, unless they're like Elena, but like a ghost can't do tons of fighting damage, at least not that we've seen yet in this universe. So like, why not just have them killed? Why not compel them with the blood oath to like, I don't know, kill each other, have somebody like stand still while somebody else kills them? I don't know. I do not know. I imagine that Maeve is going to regret this decision before the series is done though, because this was not a good decision. I'm really looking forward to seeing Dorian with the witches. I was glad to see that he ended up going with them. Obviously he's very powerful, but he and Manon have a little budding relationship going on. So I'm looking forward to seeing their interactions, and you know, they'll be doing their own thing, no pun intended, while everyone else is off presumably mostly looking for Aelin. So that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to find some Crokins, how many are left, because I know Manon's witch groups, they've been hunting these Crokins for like over 100 years to basically wipe them out. I don't know, are a bunch of them in hiding somewhere? Are there only a couple left? Is Manon like one of the last ones and she's basically gonna be a queen of an extinct group of people? I also found it super interesting that Elide decided to go with Lorcan and Gabriel, but as I thought more about it, I think it makes sense. I kind of suspected that she would go with Manon because obviously she and Manon have a connection, but I think it does make sense that she decided to go with Lorcan and Gabriel, besides being very convenient to see her continued relationship with Lorcan, because Lorcan and Gabriel, of course, are going to be trying to find Aelin, and Rowan is off doing his own thing, like solo trying to find Aelin. She can't go with him. He's like in flight mode, and nobody else is off specifically looking for Aelin. So I think it makes sense ultimately that Elide did choose Gabriel and Lorcan to go with. But again, I can't emphasize enough, I need Lorcan and Elide to like patch up whatever weird anger Elide has going on right now that I still don't understand. They need to get that resolved, because I just need them to get together. That's all I want. I want them to be together, and I want it to be like a happily ever after situation, and that is what I want. Please, Sarah J Maas, give that to me in the final book. Please let me see it. Okay, I really like, my favorite characters in this book are Manon and Lorcan, and as I've gone on, not just with this series, but as I read books, as I watch movies, I find similarly, like, my favorite characters tend to be the ones that start out with like a lot of problems, but then they have a redemption arc, and that's what we've seen so much with Manon and Lorcan in this series. They both start out as just like these ruthless beings who don't really have feelings. They see to their needs first. They don't really care about how their behavior impacts other people, except in so much as like what the effect on them will be. But over the course of the series, we've seen them both change and grow as people, and feel things and let themselves experience new things and have connections to people. And in Manon's case, not just people, but like her wyvern, you know, she really, that was one of the first things that made her start to question how she was raised and the culture that she was raised in, is that she felt such a connection to her wyvern. And I just really like seeing a good redemption arc, man. I love seeing it. I love seeing character growth, and I think that both Lorcan and Manon have had a lot of really good character growth. They started out as characters that I thought were interesting, and they were kind of like fun to hate, but really, like, almost immediately for both of them grew to really like them, because it was clear that there's more going on there. And you know, I have to say, again, one of my favorite like redemption characters too is probably Spike from Buffy. Like, of all time, I always think of Spike. He started out as like a fun bad guy, but like he was a bad guy. He was a bad guy, right? Like, he was a vampire. He had like no soul. He's going around killing people. And through this series of events, he has a huge redemption arc. I'm sorry for the spoilers for this 20-year-old series. You should watch Buffy if you haven't. Please, like, go now and watch the entire series of Buffy. But over the course of the series, Spike has an awesome redemption arc, and he's possibly my favorite character on that show. He probably is maybe behind Buffy, maybe even sometimes ahead of Buffy. I just really like Spike. He's one of my favorite characters of any show or series or book or anything of all time. I just really love Spike. I love that redemption arc with him. And I mean, he's very fun to watch. Let's be real. He's very sassy. Like, out for a walk, bitch. Spike was just a great character all around. Really liked him. This is not a video about Buffy, although it could be. But no, we're here today. We're talking about these characters in Empire of Storms. So my point is, I really love characters with a good redemption arc, and I feel like Lorcan and Manon so far have been like going smooth into a really good redemption arc, and I really like to see it. I find those characters really interesting, and God, please just let Elide and Lorcan end up together. They're so weirdly appealing as a couple, and I just really enjoy it, and I want to see more about it. For what's happening with Aelin, I hope that we don't get stuck in watching Aelin just be like tortured, because we already had Aelin in like a torture situation for captivity, and so I feel like we've already done it. And I'm hoping this is going to be a short-lived thing where it's not going to be like she spends most of the last book being tortured in captivity. I feel like there's a lot more interesting things we could see her do, so that's what I'm personally rooting for, is that like they rescue her from Maeve pretty quick in the book, and then they they start doing some other stuff. That's my personal hope for that. So I think those are all of my thoughts on Empire of Storms. What did you think? Have you read the book? Do you like it? Do you dislike it? Do you have some of the same opinions that I do? Do you disagree? It's totally okay to disagree with any of my opinions. I'm just some random person on the internet, so it's totally, I mean, like, it's always okay to disagree. Let me know. Let me know if you like this book, if you didn't like it, if let me also know about that jerking of the chin thing. Please, for the love of God, somebody tell me. Do you also think that this was one of the better books in the series? Because I think between this one and Queen of Shadows, I think these are definitely like the top 2 spots in the series so far as the entries go. So let me know what you think. I plan to read the next book in the series. I believe it's Tower of Dawn, probably next month. I've been doing these like once a month. I feel like that's a pretty good pace for them. So probably we'll do another vlog for that one. Like I said, I believe that one's focused on Kale centric kind of a book. So we'll see if it has a different feel to it than the rest of the series, because so far the rest of the series been solidly focused on Aelin. I'm open to it though, because I do really like the side characters in this series. So I think that an entire book dedicated to a side character that I enjoy, I'm definitely open to it. Thank you so much for coming by today and watching my video. I do always appreciate it. Please remember to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content like this. I'll see you next time. Thanks.